All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Get Good. Today we have a very fun topic to talk about, get good at soccer. Not going to talk about this alone today. I have special guest Oliver as well, and he loves soccer, and this is actually suggested by him on this topic of soccer. So this is a live stream. We will start in about 5 minutes, and remember to like and subscribe us. Make sure that if you're watching the recording, you can skip over to the 5-minute mark. That will be the actual start time of the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in 4 minutes. All right, 20 seconds. All right, I'm gonna start right now. So folks, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to another episode of Get Good. My name is Ian, and today's topic is on Soccer. Yes, soccer. You heard it right. And with me today, I have special guest Oliver. Hey, Oliver.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing great. Too bad we can't go out to play soccer. Not right now. But I look forward to what you're going to talk about and how you can get me back into soccer.
And hopefully get everyone else into soccer too.
Yeah, very possible. Maybe after us chatting, we have an RCD soccer team. Ooh, that would be something, huh? All right, so let's talk about this particular topic of the day. And folks, if you are joining us from home or from wherever you are, feel free to type in chat. Jared will relay your message to us, and then we'll try our best to tackle.
Tackle.
Yeah, tackle. That's a soccer term, right?
Soccer term.
Your question. All right, so let's start with the very basic question. What is soccer?
Yeah, so I mean, in the modern form of the game, it pretty much is just a game that involves two teams of 11 players who use any part of their body besides their arms and hands to get a ball in the other team's goal. So that's pretty much it. But you can even define it in even more of a basic way than that, because really at its core, the sport is really just about having a ball and kicking it to achieve some goals. So you don't even really need these two teams of 11 players. You can just, play with a couple friends or even just play by yourself. And because of how easy it is to play, that's made the sport pretty much the most popular sport in the world.
In the world.
Period.
Okay.
Full stop.
Right. So, because folks in Canada, the first sport they will grow up with, what they will get to know is hockey, ice hockey in particular, right? So, I always feel that in Canada, soccer is like a secondary, maybe even third after basketball.
Yeah.
I always feel that hockey, basketball, and then maybe even football. Now that, oh my God, it's pushing the soccer to the bottom of the list now.
Absolutely.
So soccer is not as popular in Canada after all the sports that we've mentioned. And you mentioned that, it's just for professional soccer, it's just 11 people against 11 people. And then they're just trying to shoot at each other's net. And then, the high scoring team will be the winner. All right. So very similar to other sports. What are some of the rules of soccer for some of us who are not too familiar with soccer?
Yeah, well, the rules of the game have actually changed a fair amount over the years. But modern soccer is thought to have sort of arisen in around the 19th century. And it basically developed in the UK. But yeah, the core rule really is the fact that you have to kick the ball and you can't pick it up with your hands. And when you're actually playing a game of soccer, you're trying to score goals on the other team. And then there's a lot of other rules related to kind of more your conduct on the field and what you are and are not allowed to do. So you're not allowed to violently tackle other players. There's correct ways to tackle to win the ball, and there's fouls you can get if you do it incorrectly. And then there's also things like the offside rule, which are in place to ensure that the attacking team that basically doesn't just sit next to the other team's goal and wait for the ball so they can score. So there's these rules to kind of balance out the game, but at its core, it's really just about kicking a ball. So, but yeah, you did mention that in Canada the sport isn't really as popular as in other parts in the world, and even in North America overall, a lot of people are kind of aware that we actually have a different word for the sport. We call it soccer here, but no one else calls it soccer, because everywhere else it's called football. But yeah, so I think
that is interesting. Yeah,
it is interesting.
When I was growing up in Asia, Hong Kong to be exact, right? It's always football.
It's always football. Yeah.
And when I came here, Canada called it a different thing. So
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting. Now, I want to talk about the part where how we have rules, right? It's very difficult to understand the rule of offside. Very difficult. It took me hours to explain it to my wife, for example. Whereas, in hockey, also there are rules like icing. When you are not familiar with the sport, icing, two-line pass, and stuff like that, they're kind of difficult to understand. But even watching soccer for so long, offside is still something that's very hard to pick up. Like you really needs to have multiple referees and linesmen to observe that. So what offside is basically, yes, just like what Oliver said, you can't just kick the ball to the guy at the very, very far up front and then hope that he gets the ball and kick it into the goal, right? So this is just a way to prevent people from camping at the other end, basically.
Absolutely.
That's that. So folks, you're welcome to ask questions. We'll try our best to answer them. And Jared, let me know if you have questions as well. Okay. And yes, let's talk about how you get into the sports of soccer, because like I said before, people from Canada, this is not the first sport that we go to, but for you it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into soccer around grade 2. My parents just basically signed me up. But for me, I always like to think that soccer is kind of in me because my grandpa he played, not professionally, but he played soccer and he was very passionate about the sport. And so he, I think, definitely influenced my parents' decision to enroll me in it because he always, used to watch soccer and play soccer while my mom was growing up. So, and I have memories of him kind of when I was really young, just kicking the ball around with me, which I think really helped my development and pushed me to love the sport even more. So, I think soccer is definitely in my blood, but when I first started, it was in around grade 2, and I just haven't stopped since. I just fell in love.
And are you currently participating in leagues?
Yep. I mean, it's strange with COVID, and they have their little rules around it. But right now, there are soccer leagues going for when you follow the COVID safe precautions, and it's great to still be able to get out there and be active.
Okay, wow, fantastic. Now let's talk about some of the famous world-class soccer players, because that's always an interesting, because let's face it, not everybody who, let's say, watches hockey is a hockey player, right? So sometimes there are fans out there who are following this particular sport. Soccer is no different. So Oliver, maybe you can talk about some of your favorite players.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of players. I've watched a lot of soccer with a lot of really cool moments. I have to say, for most people in the modern era, it usually comes down to the preference between Messi or Ronaldo, who are kind of the two. They're thought to be two of the players that would be competing for the title of greatest of all time, and they're also competing at the same time period and for a while in the same league. So they really pushed each other to succeed more. And for me, I appreciate the quality of both those players as contenders for the greatest of all time, but I've always, for some reason, had a slight preference for Ronaldo. Okay. Mostly, for me, a lot of people believe Ronaldo to be very arrogant, and he is. He definitely is arrogant. But for me, I definitely respect his work ethic, and the work he puts in to be as successful as he is. Because when you hear about the extra hours he puts in and what he does, it's hard not to respect him for it.
So on my screen right now, I'm showing pictures of Ronaldo, Messi, and Rooney, and they are the top scorers in their country, representing their countries, and they're currently the top scorers in each category. So in Portugal, Argentina, and England.
And in fact, Ronaldo himself recently broke the men's record for the most international goals out of anyone. So, but in fact, he's not the top goal scorer of all time, which, fun fact, belongs to a Canadian woman, Christine Sinclair, who is the top international goal scorer of all time over men and women. So,
oh wow,
some Canadian pride right there.
Awesome, very cool, very cool. Now, for me, this will show my age as well. I have these two pictures, and absolutely. I was growing up with these guys. Now, not Pele. Pele is the gentleman on the right-hand side. Now, he played in the 1950s, so this is way, way, way before my time. But as I was growing up in Asia, this is the guy to talk about. Like, he did the impossible. He did so much scoring in the World Cups that it was just unbelievable. I think FIFA just named him like the best player in the century. I think that was the title given to him. And on the left here, I just want to mention about Diego Maradona, because growing up, this was the World Cup in 1986. Okay, I still remember. I was like 5 years old back then, but it was a big deal, like because you know everybody was talking about it. People in Asia, they're crazy about soccer or football, we call it back then, and there was one particular goal from Maradona which was very controversial because it was said, well, you can actually look it up in the video, that he used his hand to score a goal. This was the first goal against England too.
In the final of the World Cup.
In the final.
Biggest game of the world at the time.
It's interesting, that particular match was more than just a soccer match because there's a little political background between Argentina and England back then. Just 4 years prior to this World Cup, there was a war between the two countries, and it's called the Falkland War. And of course, England won. And so there's a lot of negative sentiment towards England from the Argentinians. But them winning the World Cup and having Maradona to score these really spectacular goals, not just the first goal with his hand, but the second goal where he just went all the way from midfield all the way to the end and scored.
Yeah.
Was absolutely spectacular.
And soccer creates these spectacular moments like that where, you know, on the one hand there is just the pure sporting spectacle of, you know, Maradona, you know, deking past like 5 players and scoring a fantastic goal. But on the other hand, there's also just the whole political and historical element to it. You know, as you mentioned, the countries had just been at a war and now they're playing a soccer game. And so, you know, it's not like the supporters of each nation have forgotten about that. So that ties into the whole spectacle and the event. So it creates a lot more meaning and a lot more weight behind the game. And that's one of the things I love the most about soccer is how, you know, people really take it seriously pretty much everywhere besides here. And they really, you know, when their team wins, they have a great day. When their team loses, their day is bad. So, and
that's true for Canucks too. But
that's
then
true
we get
for Canucks
used to it.
too. Now everyone's just used to it. Yeah.
We do have some questions. Go ahead. Oh, okay. So what's the difference between soccer and American football?
Absolutely, yes. I like to call American football American hand-egg because that's what it actually is. But no, but basically the difference is soccer. Well, one of the big differences is that soccer has no stoppages really. When you play a half, you play straight through the half. Whereas in football, every couple minutes you stop and set up a new play. You stop and set up a new play, and it's sort of more of a slow advancement. And they're very different in how they kind of approach, they just have different rules and different ways of scoring points really. So I think a touchdown is...
Yeah, I think in terms of the physical contact,
true.
American football is a lot more than soccer, right?
Yes.
There are rules set up in soccer where, if you trip the person or if you shoulder someone really hard and he falls, these are penalties, right? So they will stop the play and then there will be a foul kick. What do you call it? Foul kick, right?
Yeah, foul or Free kick. Yeah. So all these rules are set up to have it protect the players in a game of soccer. But whereas football, when I first watched it as a kid who just came over from Asia, all I have in my head is soccer. My God, these guys just pile on one another. What's happening? Are they fighting each other? So that was really something very different. Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot more kind of... Football seems to be a lot more about kind of brute force and forcing yourself through your opponent, whereas soccer is kind of a bit more graceful, I guess, in the sense that you're not just trying to power through your opponent. You're trying to get around them and move through them and do it that way.
And while we're talking about this particular topic, when we compare American football to soccer, let me just bring back the picture of Maradona. Okay, this guy is short. He is small. In compared to other players in Europe, for example, Maradona is a small guy. If you watch some of the video, he almost looks like a kid just running around in the soccer field, but he does that with grace. He does that so spectacularly that you just feel that, wow, I can also do that. Well, because I'm Asian, I'm kind of short, I can do that. So he actually gives a lot of inspiration for different people growing up to be soccer player. It's really amazing.
Another thing I really like about soccer is how you can kind of develop a different playing style regardless of what body type you have, whereas in other sports it's kind of automatically selects for a certain type of person. For example, basketball, if you're less than like 6'5", you have a pretty low chance of making it realistically. Well, maybe not 6'5", but you have to be pretty tall to play basketball at a high level. Whereas in soccer, the two top players have completely different playing styles. Ronaldo is a pretty tall guy, relies a lot on headers and finishing, whereas Messi is a lot shorter. He relies on passing the ball around, and he has what's called a lower center of gravity, so he can turn quicker and get away from defenders quicker. So that's his asset.
Watching them play, it's almost an art. It's really
absolutely it is. In my opinion, it is art.
and you know how, let's compare, let's say, ice hockey with soccer. In the ice ring, you hear the echo from the ice, the puck is smashing the glass and stuff like that. In a soccer field, you hear this big thump sound when the player pass the ball to one another.
Yes.
And it's just a fantastic feel to it. I highly recommend you guys to watch it.
I would, of course, recommend watch some soccer games. They're always exciting. And next year we actually do have the next World Cup, which you actually mentioned a bit earlier, and I also wanted to mention the World Cup is actually the single largest sporting event in the world. So even larger than the Olympics. More people watch the World Cup than the Olympics. So
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, more people watch soccer than the rest of sports. So the World Cup itself is a fantastic sporting event to watch, and I would greatly urge everyone watching to try to pay attention to it next year.
Another question?
Sally is wondering what is the not to rules, like you definitely cannot do.
Okay. So what are the rules that you absolutely cannot do in a soccer game?
Absolutely cannot do. Well, handball is one of them. You cannot touch the ball with your hand. I mean, sometimes you can get away if the ball hits your hand by accident. If someone kicks the ball straight at your hand, we call it ball to hand. So if you had no intention of hitting it with your hand and couldn't have controlled it, but in general, you can't touch the ball with your hand at all.
And this includes the arm too. You can't just
arm.
do a chicken wing and hit the ball,
shoulder.
right?
Yeah,
right.
Up to around here is you're not allowed to touch the ball.
And it's very common to see defenders. So these are the guys protecting their own goals. They put their hands behind their back as they defend because they don't want to accidentally have the ball touching their hand and award a free kick to the other side, or even a penalty shot if it's within the crease. But these are the game rules that you get used to it.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, I mean, absolute not do's. I mean, you can't really be offside ever. That's a rule. It's hard to say you absolutely can't tackle someone wrong. Like, you're allowed physical contact in soccer. You're allowed to kind of hit people a bit, but there are judgments being made by the ref on whether it's a good tackle or a bad tackle. If you completely try to attack the person instead of the ball, then you're gonna get a foul.
Right.
So
it's not football, guys. In American football, you can't do that. You can stop the body and let the ball pass, but in soccer, you actually have to contact the ball and then stop the person. That's okay. And offside is just a tough thing to observe, but don't worry,
it was
Sally.
even more confusing the way it was first designed. But I won't try to explain it because if the modern rule is confusing, the old rule is just, what were they thinking? Who knows?
So the general rule is just trying to respect one another on the field, right? Try not to be too rough, but I know players sometimes they get so involved and then pushing and stuff, shoving will come. But just respect other players and not hurt each other. Just have a good game of soccer.
And one of my biggest things is, you want to leave it all on the field. So I am competitive when I play, and I always fight to win. But at the end of the day, you shake the other team's hand and you go off with a smile on your face. You don't want to be holding grudges from the field when you go home at night.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions? One more? Okay. So as an audience, so have you Oliver, have you been to a soccer match, a big one where you're the audience?
I haven't been to one in Europe, and one of my bucket list dreams is to go on a soccer tour in Europe and go see a couple big games at some big stadiums. I really want to go to Dortmund. They have a really good stadium, the Westfalen Stadium. There's a bunch of clubs that just have amazing supporters, and I really want to go. I've been to some games in North America. I've seen the Whitecaps, who is the
Nice.
Vancouver team, a couple times. I've also seen them play in Seattle, and Seattle actually does have a good soccer culture. They have the team, the Seattle Sounders, and they play in the stadium, the same stadium as the Seattle Seahawks, who's the football team,
Nice.
and they just have, they're one of the loudest stadiums in the world. Like they're really good about, you know, singing and creating noise and just
Good
creating
fan
a cool
base, huh?
atmosphere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's always a good time when you really when everyone's really into it. It just feels like a great experience, in my opinion.
While we're on this topic, what's your favorite team that you would like to watch in action?
Favorite team that I'd like to watch in action? Well, it's kind of hard picking your favorite team when you're from Canada, because you don't really, I mean,
None
I'd like
of
to
them
say
are my-
Vancouver,
not
but you know, I'm not,
Whitecaps.
yeah, I'm not out here watching Vancouver all the time, because frankly, the soccer here isn't as good as the soccer in Europe. My favorite team right now is Liverpool.
Liverpool, okay.
Yeah, they're very exciting, very, very good attacking team. I love their manager. I love their players. But for me, I don't have intense loyalty to one club, because I'm not connected to it from where I live. I just sort of follow the players that I like and the teams that I like at the time.
Like for me, if I can go to England and watch a game of just any match in the World Cup, that would be like bucket list. done.
Absolutely,
Yeah, just
absolutely.
anywhere in Europe is fine.
Anywhere, as long as the stadium's pretty full and people are having a good time.
Like the atmosphere is just so different, right?
Absolutely.
And even going to a hockey game for the first time here in Canada, I have to make this comparison many times, because a lot of people may not understand like the full size
No.
of the stadium in a soccer match, especially in a World Cup, compared to Canadian ice hockey, Vancouver Canucks. The atmosphere is already very good, but
Yeah.
imagine like twice or even 3 times the size of that. That is the type of crowd that we're drawing.
Yeah, well, here, most people are aware of hockey and like it. In Europe, it's for a lot of places, like everyone supports the soccer team. It's just part of life. Like soccer is just a part of life. So that just leads to I would imagine, because I haven't gone, but some of the greatest atmospheres you can get, I would imagine.
Okay, so back to some of my questions is, what are your favorite things about this particular sport?
Well, I've definitely mentioned a few of them, but there's lots of things I really love about the sport. One of them is, first of all, it's just really fun to play, always. It's just very satisfying to just kick a ball around, whether you're with your friends, whether you're with your full team, or just by yourself. It's just always fun to play soccer, and just all the little details of having a good game, making a good pass, scoring a goal, putting in a good tackle. It's just very rewarding and very satisfying. I also really like the fact that it's got a very good combination of kind of, you can express yourself individually in soccer, but it's also a team sport. So, everyone has their own position that they're manning, and you got to work together, but you can also shine individually. Whereas in sports, more like football, it's, for most players, they're just part of the wall that hits the other wall. It's not, you don't know much about them. So that's one thing. Another thing I really like about soccer. The biggest thing I would say for me is the fact that soccer truly is a universal language. And by that, it means that you can pretty much go anywhere in the world and communicate with people through soccer. So better than probably any other actual language out there. You can find people around the world that you relate to, even if you don't, for example, if I've been to Mexico once and there's some beach soccer going on there, and I was just able to join in and play without actually speaking Spanish. You just play soccer, and everyone knows what's going on. So that always makes for really cool experiences when you can go to other places in the world and do that. And I also just love following the world of soccer, because there's so many, like, it's so much more developed than a lot of the sports in North America. Even though the sports in America are hugely developed and popular, we have one league for the NFL and like one, NHL, whereas in Europe, every single country has their own soccer league that is competitive. And then they also, all the best soccer teams from those leagues compete to see who's the best team in Europe. And so there's just a lot, the quality, I think, of the overall sport is better because it's so popular. The athletes are driven by each other to reach higher levels.
It's a big thing. It's bigger than as big as ice hockey here in Canada, for example. So
Yeah.
they really put their pride in their hometown and in their team, and it's just a very rewarding experience when
sure.
they win a game. Just curious, Oliver, what position do you play?
Yeah, so that's actually when I first started playing, full-sided soccer where it's 11 aside, I got put on center back, which I didn't want to play. I used to play attacking when I was, a kid. I always wanted to score goals, but I got put center back, and I hated it for a couple years, but it started to grow on me a bit. But yeah, I played anywhere along the defensive line, but there was one season where, because I didn't want to play center back anymore, I tried out as a striker, and I made the team as a striker. So I played 1 year as a striker, which was a strange experience, but also very enjoyable. But mostly I played defense.
Okay, cool. Awesome. We have about 5 minutes left. Do we have any questions regarding soccer? Okay, so
I had one more. I was going to say, in addition to my favorite things about the sport, one thing I forgot to mention is just how truly accessible the sport is.
Right.
That is one big benefit. Really, you don't need much equipment to play soccer. All you need is one thing, a ball. And even the ball isn't too hard to make. So you mentioned earlier one of the most famous players in history, Pele. One thing that's maybe not well known about Pele is that he actually started out, his first soccer ball was just a plastic bag stuffed with socks, I believe. Like, he made his own soccer ball just out of some household items, and then he became the greatest player in the world. And lots of other star players in the modern era, they started playing soccer just on the streets of Brazil or on the beaches in Mexico or whatever. Like, you just play it wherever, and it doesn't matter where you are, you can always play soccer. And even for people, one thing I was curious about when I was preparing for this was whether there's soccer for people who are in wheelchairs, and it turns out there's even soccer for people in wheelchairs. So really, anyone out there in the world at this moment, unless you're completely incapable of moving, you can play soccer.
Right. Absolutely.
Which, to me, that's a very powerful thing.
Now, I think one of the questions that people would like to ask is, how do you actually become good at this particular sport? So far, we've been talking about, all the good stuff around soccer. We're trying to get people hooked on this sport. Okay, but how do you actually get good at this sport?
How do you get good? Well, the number one thing, of course, is to just play. You need to play all as much. The more you play, the better you'll get. And play with people who are as good as you, or hopefully a bit better. That's how you would improve. You don't want to play with people who are completely better than you, but just a little bit better, and you will improve. And then in addition to that, the other thing you'd have to focus on is just training the basics. So making sure your passes are accurate. If you can't do a 5-foot pass, you're not gonna be able to do a 20-foot pass. So just get the solid basics down first. Know how to make a pass, know how to shoot, know how to put in a tackle. And also, one thing that is, of course, hugely important in soccer, if you want to be competitive, is to be fit.
Yep.
But it is also worth mentioning that it's kind of a specific type of fitness. You can't, I've heard one of my old soccer coaches used to love saying how long distance runners don't make good soccer players, because it's not about running far, it's about sprint and recovery. So you have to sprint to get to the ball, and then you have to recover while the play is still going on, and then sprint again. So it's completely different from just going out for a 5K jog. It's like going out for a 5K, sprint for 100 meters, catch your breath, sprint for another. So that's the type of training you need to do for soccer.
There's no line change in soccer, right? In hockey,
No.
there's line change. You
get 3 subs for your entire game, and then
3
that's
people.
it.
That's
3
it.
people can come on, and 3 people can come off.
I think this is good. I think we've covered just about everything. I would like to see like an RCD soccer team forming after this. I can
wanna
see
see it
like
too.
Ella running like Maradona, and Tom is like Sedan, right? And just that's how I can imagine.
He
things.
does have the head.
That's right. All right, folks. We will have some changes for the Get Good in the new year, but I'll announce it as we proceed onwards. The next 2 Get Good will be a video, so it will not be a live stream. I can also tell you the topic. We will have an interview with a member, RCD member, next week, and the week after that will be a RCD volunteer. And then afterwards we'll stop for Christmas and we'll take a break. And then I will update the YouTube page so that we are on top of what's happening in the new year as well. But yes, there will be some changes, good changes as well. Thank you for joining us. I hope.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you guys next week. Bye now.
Bye.